I love My Hero Academia. I've been watching the anime since the day it first aired, I've been reading the manga for years, I collect the manga, and I collect the figures. I even own My Hero Academia themed clothing. Point is, I'm a big fan of My Hero Academia, and as a big fan of this series, I am very disappointed. And if you pay even the slightest bit of attention to the online My Hero Academia community, you can see that the sentiment is shared across most people. When a series like this, when any series for that matter, takes such a staggering nosedive in quality, backlash like this is the only logical and natural response. And while I wish I could speak positively about My Hero Academia in this video, I just can't. Unfortunately, for about the last year or so now, My Hero Academia has been taking that staggering nosedive. Each arc has been getting progressively worse and worse, and every single writing decision just has me scratching my head and wondering, where did it all go wrong? I wish I could answer that question easily. I wish I could point at one specific moment and tell you, this is the exact moment My Hero Academia changed for the worse. But I can't. And it's not because that moment doesn't exist, it's because too many of those moments exist. Initially, what I was going to do was make a video about every single arc following the Paranormal Liberation War. Basically, every single arc that's been made in the last year from summer 2021 to the current time of fall 2022. And the further along I got with this project, the more I realized just how redundant it would get to talk about the exact same issues over and over again, because that's the state My Hero Academia is in right now. It's cyclical, it's repetitive, it's boring, it's sad. And the further along I got into my writing, I realized a lot of these current issues are just symptomatic of a lot of the flaws from the series past, ever since My Hero Academia's inception. Whether it be giving the most important moments to the most underdeveloped characters, or the fear of killing off already established characters hindering the series, any and every flaw you can think of that has existed in My Hero Academia has been shoved into these arcs in full view for everyone to see, leaking out like a gross pus, making it hard to look at. And that might sound hyperbolic, but it's true. My Hero Academia is really hard to look at right now. About a year ago, I made a video on My Hero Academia Season 5, and at the time, I thought the anime would be the only part of the series that sees this sharp decline in quality. I chalked it all up to corporate greed and a studio that prioritizes profits over making something truly great with passion behind it, and while it was depressing, I accepted that the anime will just be a lower standard of quality from now on. I thought to myself, at least I have the manga to look forward to. At least Horikoshi puts passion into what he writes. And sadly, that was a naive thought of me. There is clearly no more love left for this series. At least from what I can observe, this is a soulless, loveless series now. It has become blatantly clear that Horikoshi desperately wants to end My Hero Academia. And on one hand, I can see why he wants to end this series so desperately. I have never seen a mangaka before Horikoshi be so bogged down by his editors. From what I could gather from nearly every other Weekly Shonen Jump manga, it seems like they have almost full creative control over their story. Let's look at Jujutsu Kaisen as the perfect example. Without spoiling too much, in a singular arc, multiple fan favorite characters were killed off and another fan favorite has been locked away and has not appeared in over a year and a half in real time of the manga's current run. And even more recently, Yuji, the main protagonist, has not appeared in the story for a good handful of chapters now. Inversely, it seems like popularity and fan reception are what entirely control My Hero Academia. It's why Class 1A always somehow manages to weasel their way into certain arcs. It's why we can't get those major character deaths. It's why we can't spend too much time away from Deku or the main cast. What the fans want and what Weekly Shonen Jump wants ultimately means more than what Horikoshi himself wants in the story. And in my opinion, it's done nothing but damage the series. And if you don't believe me, just take the words from Horikoshi himself. From the Jump Ultra Stage event that they held in spring of this year, Horikoshi talked about the popularity of the early days of My Hero Academia, more specifically about Volume 8 and Season 3 for the anime. He recalled this specific period of time as hard, stating, "Up until the summer training camp, the series had a pretty steady amount of popularity, but the moment I hinted that there were villains coming, crash. The popularity suddenly dropped. Sorry for talking about this, but I guess people didn't want them there. I already planned the storyline and I couldn't just have the villains leave without doing anything. I decided to cut short some of the things I was planning to do during the summer training camp and hurried to the next battle." If his statement didn't make this obvious enough, clearly the negative reception of this arc changed the trajectory of My Hero Academia forever. It can be inferred that All Might was not supposed to fight All for One yet, and when you look at it objectively, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. They fought really prematurely. All Might is the supposed strongest character in the series, and All for One being the main antagonist, you wouldn't expect them to have their final confrontation this early on in the series. Now, of course, I could be wrong in my speculation and this fight was always meant to happen here, but from the sounds of it, it seems like he just put it here to satisfy the fans. And really, that's all My Hero Academia feels like nowadays. It is just trying to appease the fans, and it no longer feels like Horikoshi is writing the story for himself. Now, if you were to ask me if I agreed that My Hero Academia would be ending soon about a year ago when that rumor started, I would say no. To me, My Hero Academia has limitless potential. I've always seen it as a series that could go on for ages. I don't think it needs to be the next One Piece, and I certainly don't want it to overstay its welcome, but I think there is still much more to be explored, and sadly, Horikoshi has been going through the motions and wrapping everything up as quickly as possible, to the point where I can't see a future for this series anymore. It really does feel like we're in the endgame now, and while we don't have a confirmed end date for this series, I can't see it existing past this arc. It is genuinely upsetting to me that the series seems like we're this close to finishing and Deku barely just finished his first year of high school. And what that tells me is that Horikoshi really did have plans to go through every single year of his high school, and that this would have been a really long series. But somewhere along the line, Horikoshi just gave up. He no longer wanted to continue this series and wants to rush towards its ending as fast as possible. So is it the negative fan reception? Or is it the Weekly Shonen Jump editors breathing down his neck? Or did Horikoshi simply just lose his passion for writing the story? We will never know, unfortunately. Or maybe nothing changed with Horikoshi and he's writing the same as usual and this is the direction it was always going towards. I'm just so beyond disappointed with the current state of My Hero Academia that I'm trying to find any excuse at all that I could give Kohei Horikoshi for why it is the way it is right now. But the sad reality is, My Hero Academia is what happens when you see somebody lose the love they once had for something they created. It has become a story that is just going through the motions, attempting to wrap up as many plot points as fast as possible so that it could end in a quote-unquote satisfying manner. And while it's a really sad sight to see, can we really blame Horikoshi if this is the case? I just want to end this video by saying that if you still enjoy My Hero Academia and the current direction it's going, that's great. On the anime side of things, it's just hard to care about where things go anymore when it's clear that Studio Bones prioritizes making non-canon movies and profiting off of them rather than adapting the series faithfully. And as for the manga, I'm not interested in the cheap bait and switches and the horribly timed fake out deaths anymore. I'm not a fan of creating seemingly important characters with new and unique powers, only to kill them off in the same arc. I'm not a fan of touching upon years-long plot points just to finish them off in the most underwhelming and unsatisfying way imaginable. I am not a fan of what My Hero Academia has become. Anyways, read My Hero Academia Vigilantes. It's much better.